This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian. I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
Look, some of us are lazy, alright?
If by lazy you mean wrong.
Prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide whether the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because guess what? This film is lit. After the disappearance of her scientist father, three peculiar beings send Meg, her brother, and her friend to space in order to find them. It's a wrinkle in time, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to the 16th episode of This Film is Lit. Today's episode, it's our first review and discussion of a film that just came out in theaters. It is 2018's Disney's A Wrinkle in Time, and it is based on the 1962 novel A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. That's how we decided that was pronounced. We're going to get into our segments. I think you'll get our feelings on this film throughout the course of the review. I think the episode, as opposed to kind of reviewing it up front here. Mm-hmm. We have a lot to discuss. So just strap in and you'll see how we feel about this. Let's start with Guess Who?
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
So this book is full of character descriptions.
Okay.
Pretty much everybody has a description. I'm not including all of them for various reasons.
Right.
But we still have quite a few to get to.
Okay.
So here we go. She looked at herself in the wardrobe mirror and made a horrible face, bearing a mouthful of teeth covered in braces. Automatically, she pushed her glasses into position, ran her fingers through her mouse-brown hair so that it stood wildly on end, and let out a sigh almost as noisy as the wind.
Well, that surely has to be Meg.
It surely is Meg.
Yes. I feel like that's pretty easy. It fits pretty much on the nose.
Yeah.
Especially considering she's not black or mixed, I guess, in the book, right? Well, I guess I don't even know if they know. Because that was a big outcry from idiots on the internet.
I mean, okay. So the other members of her family, some of them it's more obvious that they're white. They're not described as white, but they have like eye colors that are more typically
like blue
Caucasian.
Hair, blonde-eyed or something
blue hair,
like
blonde
that,
eyes, red hair, blah blah blah.
At least.
Right, where you would probably assume they're meant to be Caucasian. However, in the description that we get of Meg, doesn't mention her race. I'm just going to toss that out there.
Just throwing that out there for all
okay, brown hair, check.
Cool
glasses,
people.
Check. Braces, left that out of the movie.
Left that out. Yeah. And they because the brown mousy hair and the way she's like, because that's a big sticking point, I think, because she has very, like, natural hair,
she wears her
and
hair
that's
very
kind
natural.
of a thing she doesn't really like. Mm-hmm. And they make a point of that. But, like, the description of her hair and it standing on end and actually fits with her character description, so, okay. Glad that was worth getting outraged over, idiots on the internet. One for one, next one.
She untied a blue and green paisley scarf, a red and yellow flowered print, a gold Liberty print, and a black and red bandana. Under all this, a sparse quantity of grayish hair was tied in a small but tidy knot on top of her head. Her eyes were bright, her nose a round, soft blob, her mouth puckered like an autumn apple.
There's a lot of layers going on there, which makes me think it's one of the witches or whatever they're called. I cannot remember their names for the life of me. It was Miss What's It, Who's It, and what's...
It's Mrs. What's It, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which.
Okay, and Mrs. Which... And I know them most as the actresses who play them, being Mindy Kaling, Oprah, and Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
So my initial thought was that Reese Witherspoon at one point, not when she's introduced, but at one point has lots of like scarfy things on. The gray hair makes me think it's Oprah's character, because the other ones don't ever have gray hair. It's probably not Meg's mom, because Meg's mom does not have gray hair. So I'm going to go with Oprah, Miss Witch, right? Is that the right name? At
Yes.
least okay.
But it's Mrs. What's It. It's Reese Witherspoon.
Reese Witherspoon. That's the other one I could see. She has red hair in the movie, but...
The amount that the movie sexes them up
Oh, yeah?
is a lot.
Really?
Like a lot.
They're all just like old women?
Yeah, they're just like funny old ladies
Yeah.
in the book.
I mean, I guess it sexes... It youngins them up, which I guess you could argue then in turn sexes them up. But I don't think any of them are particularly portrayed as... like sexy. They're all wearing tons of clothes like all the time. And like...
All right, I'll cede to your point. It glitters them
Yes,
up.
okay, maybe glitters them up, but that's just the aesthetic, so... But yeah. Okay. Alright, well, that was one of those two. Next one.
Tall he certainly was, and skinny. His bony wrists stuck out of the sleeves of his blue sweater. His worn corduroy trousers were 3 inches too short. He had orange hair that needed cutting, and the appropriate freckles to go with it. His eyes were an oddly bright blue.
I can't remember his name either, but the boy, the friend. Oh wait, it could be her brother. No, skinny. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's whatever the friend is.
Calvin.
It's Calvin.
Yeah, it's Calvin.
Okay. Woo! 2 for 3.
There appeared a figure in a black robe and a black peaked hat, beady eyes, a beaked nose, and long gray hair. One bony claw clutched a broomstick.
Well, this has got to be Ms. Witch.
Yeah, it's
All right.
Witch. It's Oprah.
Yeah, Oprah. It's Oprah. It's Oprah's character. That makes sense. She didn't have a broomstick ever, I don't think, but
No.
just going on the name alone, I was just making an assumption there. All right.
She wore a turban of beautiful pale mauve silk and a long, flowing purple satin gown.
Okay, well, I'm going to process some elimination this one and say Mrs. Mindy Kaling. I don't know the character's name.
Mrs. Who.
Mrs. Who.
But it's not Mrs. Who. It's the happy medium.
Oh, it's a woman.
It's Zach Galifianakis' character. Yeah, it's a woman in the book.
Doesn't that balance out all the idiots on the internet being mad that they made the main character black? That they made a classically female character a man? But sure. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of lady power in this book.
Yeah, well, and there is in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much the theme of the film.
He had grown a beard, and the silky brown was shot with gray. His hair, too, had not been cut. It was pushed back from his high forehead and fell softly almost to his shoulders, so that he looked like someone in another century, or a shipwrecked sailor.
All right, well, that is very clearly Chris Pine.
Yes. It's Mr. Murray, or Dr.
Meg's
Murray.
dad. Meg's dad.
I think he's doctor.
Yeah, that's pretty good. His hair was a little shorter in the movie, but that was pretty spot on
Yeah.
with his description. 4 for 6. Whatever. Still pretty good. Well, that was that for that. We'll get that out of the way, so now we can really get into how our feelings on this film, because that was the nice fun part. We're going to get into, was that in the book, which will tease in a little bit, and then really when we get into Lost in Adaptation in a few minutes, it's going to get interesting. But let's do, was that in the book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
All right, I only have a few things because there were so many things I could pick, and so there's probably things in Lost in Adaptation that could fit in this category, but I don't know. I just had a few in particular things that stuck out to me as potentially as potential additions for the movie. Mindy Kaling, Mrs. Who,
Mm-hmm.
Does she speak in quotes in the book?
Yes.
Yes.
It comes off a little more naturally in the book than it does in the movie.
Okay.
She doesn't follow up the person's name by stating what country they're from.
Okay.
In the book.
Oh, like, yeah.
Yeah.
But they had to do that because
know.
they used some contemporary ones and they use it as a punchline for some jokes and stuff here and there. It kind of works. But they had to do that for some of honestly, for the big one at the end, because nobody, I don't think, would. I mean, I'm a huge Hamilton fan, and spoilers that there's a Hamilton reference at the end of this movie. I've listened to the soundtrack dozens of times. If she had not said Miranda afterwards, I would have been like, was that?
Well, right,
was
because
she quoting Hamilton?
She doesn't give the whole quote.
No,
that would
she
make
doesn't.
It obvious
Because it doesn't make sense as the whole quote. She can only use the one line of "Tomorrow there'll be more of us." Because if she says, "Let's drink for the four of us," tomorrow there'll be more of us. In the context of the scene, doesn't really. Or let's drink to the four of us. Yeah, tomorrow there'll be more. It doesn't really make sense in the context of the scene. So they had to add the last name thing, so you kind of got where that was from. And I think in numerous times there's one with like I think a Chris Tucker line from, or I don't even know. She says Tucker at one point.
Yeah, and
it's like she just says like one exclamation.
Oh, that's when she says "damn."
Yeah, and I assume she was doing like Chris Tucker when she said I don't know. I'm trying to think what other Tucker it could be, but it would be weird because anyways.
But
so the quote speaking is
it's in there. She doesn't like just say quotes. She kind of buffers them
with normal words.
Yeah, with like normal.
Interesting.
So to me, it comes off a little more naturally.
Yeah, it would make sense as somebody who was like a very sage person to drop a lot of quotes, but also speak normally. I think the way they say it in the movie actually kind of works, where she's used all of her own words. Like, it's a funny, like, it kind of makes sense. They explain it as she's used all of her own words, so now she only speaks in other people's words or something like that. But then they drop that when she gets to the evil world, because at that point their power's fading. So when their power's fading, she can speak in her own words.
It's explained kind of the same way in the book. They say, like, oh, she's evolved past language, so it's easier for her to just use other people's words.
Yeah, that's what they say in the movie.
But they don't do the whole thing with, like, the powers fading, and I wasn't really sure, like, what kind of a rule the movie was trying to set up there.
I don't know. That's a big problem. Maybe we should have started with a slight overall review, but yeah, that was an issue I had. I think we'll get kind of a mini review when we get to Lost in Adaptation. So hang around for just a bit more. We got a couple more for Was That in the Book. This is a big moment in the film, a big visual moment in the film, in both good and bad ways, in my opinion. The flying plant lady thing. Is that in the book?
Okay, so no, but also kind of. Because Mrs. Whatsit, Reese Witherspoon's character, she doesn't turn into, like, she turns into like a leaf stingray thing with a head.
Is that in the movie you're talking about?
Yeah,
yes.
in the movie.
Yeah, in the context, they get to the first planet after they first test her, and it's like a big, like, flowery, I think it was shot in New Zealand, but it's like a big, green, beautiful planet.
It's a beautiful
And they talk
place.
to some flowers, and the flowers tell her father is this way, and then so she turns into like somewhere towards the sky or in space or something. So Reese Witherspoon turns into a giant plant, like you said, manta ray dragon-y thing.
It's like a giant leaf with a head.
Yeah.
And they all jump on her leaf back.
Yeah, and this looks terrible.
Oh, it looks awful.
The CG green screening compositing of those characters on her is really bad for some reason.
And I don't think, like, it's not good. I guess like the computer animation of her as the plant.
I thought that was okay.
I didn't think it was. I thought it was kind of cheesy looking.
I thought that was okay. Not great, but okay, or pretty good. The thing that as soon as they got on it, it looked very cheap. Like it looked like. I mean, there were other visual effects later, and in certain parts it looked fine and looked good, but that one was really rough. Like the moments when they're like falling around on it and stuff. It reminded me of like when you watch really cheesy like sci-fi movies
Yeah.
of people superimposed into green screen environments, and they're kind of like not connected. You can very clearly tell that they are not physically in the environment that they are in. And that was an issue.
Yeah.
With that scene.
But in the book, she doesn't turn into a giant flying leaf.
Okay.
She does turn into a giant winged centaur.
That's pretty sweet.
I know. I had completely forgotten about that. Because, like I said, I hadn't read this book since I was, like, a kid. And then I got to that part, and I was like, literally all I want to know about this movie is, does Reese Witherspoon turn into a centaur? That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed.
She does not, unfortunately. All right. My final one was that in the book, and then we can really get into the meat of this thing. The glasses that they give that Mindy Kaling?
Yeah, Mindy Kaling.
Gives Meg as a gift to help her see the structure of the universe or whatever. I don't even know exactly what they do. She puts them on and she can see things that she couldn't see.
They are in the book.
Okay.
They are a lot prettier in the movie.
Yeah, they're neat looking.
In the book, they're just kind of described as like big, thick glasses.
Yeah,
but they are in the book,
faceted.
and they come from Mrs. Who, and they work the same way. They help her see things that she can't see otherwise.
Okay. So those are in the book. I thought they could be, but I also thought it could be a way to kind of shortcut.
Right.
Story-wise, if they needed
to. Yeah.
Somehow, Yeah, I don't even know what it would be. I just felt like it could have been something that they could use to kind of shortcut and shorthand a more complicated issues in this story later if she has some magical thing that helps her see. But in the book, all right. So we're going to go to Lost in Adaptation here. So let's do that.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Where was it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
Okay, I have a lot for this one. And this is where I guess we'll get in to kind of our feelings, and because I think a lot was lost.
Yeah. I think they tried to do a lot of things with this.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot of it just didn't really pan out.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, and we'll save even more of like some of the problems for our general discussion here coming up after this section. And I guess because we're not going to do...
Yeah, I don't really want to do better in the book,
better in the movie. So we're going to kind of substitute that section for our general discussion / review of the film. So that'll be coming up here in a minute or two. We'll get into a little bit of the problems we had here in Lost in Adaptation. But so for me, a lot was lost in adaptation because this movie's a mess.
Yeah, we came out of the theater and you were like, what happened?
What just happened? It is, unfortunately, an absolute mess. Here's things that confused me, and I'm going to need your help. Did her dad leave them on purpose?
I think the movie kind of implies yes.
Yes, it does, but it also kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is why I was confused.
So, in the book, it's a little bit different because he's working for the government.
Okay.
And I think they kind of implied in the movie that he, like, worked for NASA or something.
He's at least, like, somehow tied... He's like I don't know if he works for NASA, but he gives a presentation to people, like, from...
Right.
Like, NASA or the government. But I think it's less implied he's working for them and more implied he's like a scholar, he's an academic and he's presenting his findings or whatever.
Yeah.
And not so much he works for them. Maybe he has grant money from the government or whatever, but I wouldn't say he works for NASA.
But in the book, when he vanishes, it's because he's working on a top secret government project.
Oh.
And I remember, too, that this is Cold War era.
Okay, right, yeah.
Right,
so this was set
that ties into... thematic elements of the time period,
right.
Concerns that people would have had. It would have made a lot of sense at the time. So, in the book, yes and no. I mean, he's working for the government on purpose, but, they send him away, and his mission is... Well, I guess they don't know if it's successful because he hasn't come back, because... He's been trapped. So
that's a very different thing to me, because if they send him away and like it's not his, because in the movie I could not tell if he left on purpose, because they make it sound that way a lot.
Yeah.
And the moment where we see him leave, where she has that flashback later in the movie where he's like out in the shed and he looks in at the family, and it looks like, I assume he's making the conscious decision to go and do this. But also, I kind of feel like it was supposed to be an accident. Like or at least it was an accident. How long he was gone, I guess, was definitely supposed to be the case, because we're not supposed to be. I couldn't understand if we were supposed to be upset with him that he like left them, or if we weren't, because it sort of felt like they were all like, "Why'd you leave us?" But I also got the feeling that he didn't mean to be gone that long,
right?
And we ultimately end up not ever feeling or resolving the idea that he like abandoned them or anything. But I also feel,
that's where I think one of the thematic things that they were trying to do with the movie didn't quite pan out, because you're right, it's not clear how we're supposed to feel about him having been gone, or whether or not we're supposed to blame him for it.
Yeah, I never understood, because it feels like she's upset with him about it, and he even seems to somewhat take ownership of the fact that he left, and like it was his decision, and like he left them, but like at the same time there's never any, we immediately are fine with it. Like their reunion, they immediately are over it and are cool, and like there's no, and like when he comes back home, his wife, like she's immediately fine, like everything's fine. And it almost felt like, well, it sounded like you were setting it up that he did this, like he left, like he was like, I gotta go do this, and because he says like, I want to shake hands with the universe, blah blah blah. And I guess the implication is that he did do it on purpose, and that we are supposed to be upset, but he did not mean to be gone for 4 years. It was sort of a weird thing where he got caught by the it or whatever, and so was trapped somehow or something. I'm guessing is the implication. So it makes more sense, in the book at least, that if it was an accident, like he was working on some project and got voiped into the. Or I don't know if that's what you're saying, or if.
Well, we never really know for sure.
Okay.
Because it's like a top secret, and
it's
so
more,
the government's basically like not telling the family where he is or what happened to him.
So they don't have the same sort of feeling of, because they all knew what he was working on. They all knew because he was working on it with the mom, and they all kind of knew what he was doing to some extent, and so I don't know. I had a hard time trying to figure out that. Like whether or not I was supposed to be upset at him or not. I couldn't decide.
Right, that's why I say I think it doesn't play out thematically, because they kind of start out acting like, oh, we're going to be upset with him, and this is going to be like one of our themes of this, and then at the end of it, that kind of falls flat.
Yeah, it just goes away.
Yeah,
like,
they don't really work through that.
No, at least it didn't seem like it. Okay. Moving on. Why? So, and this, you probably don't have an answer to this. Well, we can discuss tessering a bit. It's a thing they do to get from place to place in the universe or whatever, or from parallel universe to parallel universe, or wherever they're traveling, which was never particularly super made clear. But they do this thing called tessering, where they focus on the universe or something, and it allows them to travel through space-time.
Okay, so it actually is explained a little bit.
Okay.
In the book.
It is in the movie, I just don't remember exactly.
Well, I think the movie explanation is a little cheesy.
Doesn't he say something about love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, you have to find the right frequency to be able to tesser, and the right frequency is love.
Yeah.
Which
what
is
does
not
that mean? Doesn't really mean anything.
Book.
Okay. It also doesn't really, I'm like, what does that even mean?
So, in the book, only the 3 misses can tesser.
Okay.
And I think the dad tessered initially with help of some kind of equipment.
Yeah, whatever, the government.
Yeah.
Which is, I think the implication also, when he leaves, he has some equipment set up.
Right.
And that kind of is what allows it to happen in the shed or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's explained in the book the same way as you bend the fabric, you fold the fabric and touch two ends of it together, and now you can jump over this. That's why it's called a wrinkle in time, because they wrinkle the fabric.
And they do touch on that in the movie, and there's at least an illustration of that happening at one point, I think, during their presentation. And also, there's another thing about it that I want to get on when we get later. We discuss kind of our general problems and stuff with the movie. There's a part that where that came up that wasn't in the movie, but we'll get to. So they do explain that to some extent. And I did get that idea that that's what was happening. My question is, so her dad can do it in the movie, and her dad can just. So they find him. She finds him, and he's like in this room, this like cool looking room, and she gets him out of it. And then as soon as they're out of it, and then Charles Wallace is like dragging him around, being evil Charles Wallace or whatever. He's like, we got to get out of here. We got to test her right now. And then he does, and him and Calvin are just gone. Yeah. So he takes them out of there, and she resists because she wants to save Charles Wallace. Right. And I was like, okay, so could he have done that the whole time? Is there any indication in the book that he's being held somewhere where he can't get out? Okay, that's what I was wondering, I guess.
In the book, he's actually being held in like a pitch black tube, which sounds way more terrifying than
I did
being
like
held in a cool orangey room.
I liked that. I thought it was visually interesting, but it's not terrifying.
No, it's not terrifying.
Oh, it could be a little sort of insanity-inducing, like...
Yeah, sure, but not as much as a pitch black tube.
No. Okay. So, and I suppose the assumption there is that that's something that he couldn't get out of, and right, which I guess is implied in the movie. It just is a little strange to me that he immediately can like whoop, voip himself back.
In the book he doesn't. He can't tesser without help from equipment. So like that part in the movie really didn't make sense because, like you said, when he initially did it, he had that equipment there. Yeah. Of like, well, I guess I don't really know what the equipment was supposed to be doing. Maybe it was just measuring things.
Well, one of the things is, one of the things we see in the film is it's a plate that you can put sound vibration through. Mm-hmm. Because you've seen like YouTube videos of people do this, and when you put vibrations through at certain frequencies, you dump sand on it, and we see him doing this with Meg early in the movie. You dump sand on it, you turn it at certain frequencies, and it makes cool designs because the way the vibrations move, they like create interesting and like really neat designs, and it's kind of like this cool like sciencey trick you can do. And he has that, and so I guess that plays into the idea of like frequencies and focusing on whatever. And so he's using something along those lines and maybe some other stuff when he does it the first time. But yeah, he just does it at the end of the movie and voips himself out of there. Yeah, and that doesn't happen in the book.
No, I guess he does tesser in the book. It's like a throwaway line.
Oh, okay.
But he does do it.
Huh. Well, it's interesting. I wonder. Maybe he didn't need the technology. Maybe it was.
Yeah, maybe once he learned how, he
sort of figured it out. Like the technology or the equipment or whatever helped him kind of figure it out, and then he knew how to do it or something. Yeah. I guess. Okay. Interesting. All right. So I don't know. It's not much clarity on it, but it is what it is. All right. So let's go to this one now. What is the It? What is its goal?
Oh, you want to talk about the It now?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So the It is darkness and evil.
All right, so it's darkness and evil. I got that. That was clear from the movie. It's like it doesn't have any goals. It's just sort of spreading. It's kind of like the Nothing in Neverending Story. Would that be a similar?
Yeah, kind of.
Where it's like an unthinking sort of just thing spreading, kind of like a virus or something.
It's a brain.
Oh, it is.
In the book.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's spreading. I mean, this is kind of where we get some of the like Christian themes of the novel, where you have this entity that's like just evil and it exists to be evil. Right. And everyone else's badness is caused by this kind of evil and darkness.
Okay. And I got that in the movie because they have that moment where when they're describing it or whatever, Scalagits or whatever the fuck it's, whatever the planet or area place that is
Camazotz.
from. Camazotz, that's it. They have that scene where they're jumping around to different characters in the real world, like characters we know, like being shitty or being upset or whatever, and it very clearly being caused by
right.
The it or whatever. So I guess I got that. I guess it really answers my question. I just felt like I was a little like unsatisfied and like it was given a little short shrift of like what exactly we're fighting against here. Like other than just like badness was kind of the problem. I don't know, when I was watching the movie, I was just a little like, so it's just, okay, it makes people bad. And it's just this thing. That's it?
Not exactly, but I want to put a pin in that and come back to it a little later because there's something else kind of big that I want to talk about in regards to that. All
right. And then, this is to touch on that with Charles Wallace, which is an interesting whole thing. There's a lot to discuss there, but his turn in the movie is eventually he becomes the villain of the film, basically. Not him, really, but the it through him or whatever becomes the villain of the movie. Is that the same in the book?
Yes.
Okay. Is it established in the book more why?
Yes.
Okay.
So the movie did a really, really bad job with Charles Wallace.
This was a nightmare for me because when he becomes evil, I was like, what? Why?
Like, Charles Wallace in the movie, definitely smart for his age.
Yeah.
A little precocious.
Yeah.
A little odd.
I would say even more than that. They portray him as brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a throwaway line early by Reese Witherspoon that says something along the lines of, like, he's the most brilliant. There's something, I don't know. She has some line about how special and brilliant he is.
So in the book, he's kind of like a proto-Charles Xavier.
Okay.
Like, he basically has, like, telepathy. He can kind of read minds. He's, like, he's not just a genius. He's, like, next level.
Okay.
And I think they did a really poor job portraying that.
I got elements of that. And, some of the things he knows and the way he pretends to, or not pretends, but the way where he, like, the way he talks about, but you could also see it being easily portrayed so there's moments where he seems to know things that he should have no earthly chance of knowing, but you could also write it off as him being a weird little kid saying shit.
Exactly.
Kind of. Like, it almost comes across as just this weird, very smart, like, maybe, like, on the spectrum, like, I don't even know if that's the right description for it, but, like, where he just says things where everybody's like, what? And, like, where he talks about, he like, jokes with the witch, whatever, what are they called? The three...
They call them the three misses.
Okay, the three misses. He, like, jokes with them about Meg not being caught up yet and, like, like, that sort of thing where I'm like, oh, does he, like, know everything that's going on? But then also I'm like, maybe he's just being a weird little kid, like, and saying weird, like,
right.
kind of.
And that's why I say I don't think they did a great job with setting him up, because you can kind of read it either way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we lost with Charles Wallace was that in the book, the reason he gets
possessed.
That's the word I was looking for. He gets possessed by it because he gets a big head about what he's capable of doing.
Okay.
And he, like, opens himself up to the it because he's like, well, I have to, because that's the only way we'll know what's going on. I can do it. And then bing, bang, boom.
Right.
He gets possessed.
That's not what happens from what I recall in the movie.
In the movie, it's real abrupt and sudden. Like, he suddenly just starts, like, repeating the multiplication tables along with, what's his name? Michael Pena?
Michael Pena, yeah. Well, it's after he eats the food.
Right, and the food actually has nothing to do with it.
It doesn't? I didn't think it did, because he eats it and goes, it just tastes like sand.
Yeah.
But But yeah, he just seems to randomly all of a sudden be like possessed. And I was like, and yeah, because my other question was, was the food somehow have to, because they eat, they make this, and this is my other, lost in adaptation, which just drove me crazy. Either they left something out of the movie or the editing was off.
So that there is food in the book. They do eat food. He says the food does taste like sand.
Right.
The food isn't real.
Yeah, it's not real in the movie.
It's not real, and when you eat the food, like, if you're of a certain intelligence level, you're not fooled by it.
Okay.
So, like, that's
when he's like, it tastes like sand, and then Calvin's like, it tastes delicious, or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, okay. But the thing that drove me crazy about the food, and why, and I guess, does it play out this way in the book, is... There's a scene where it's the Stepford Wives scene, I'll call it. I don't know what a better description for it. It's the one you see in the trailer where all the little kids out on the thing. I don't know if that's in the book or described similarly. And they're standing there and they're watching all the kids, and they all go inside for dinner. And then that one mom is like, hey, you guys should come eat some food. And they've been warned like in the scene before this, they've been warned by, I guess, Oprah or whoever right before they left. Like, don't trust anything here. This place is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Don't trust anything. And they go, she's like, you guys should come in and eat some food. And they're like, and Calvin's like, I'm pretty hungry. And then Meg's like, don't do it. We can't, that's a bad idea. Let's get out of here. And then literally they turn around and walk away. And then that setting drops away and they're on the beach. And it's the beach scene. Yeah. And they even have a line where she says, oh yeah, they said it's a place of many faces. It can change, or that Camosats is a place that, it can change. And so this is just, we're still, reiterating the idea, don't trust what we're seeing, don't trust any of this. They walk over to that beach setting, and there's food there, and they immediately start eating it. Well, Meg doesn't, but the other two do, and she doesn't try to stop them. And I'm like, you just, in the last scene, were like, we shouldn't eat that food. It's not a good idea. And then the next scene, there's food, and they're like, all right, we can eat some of this food, I guess. Does that happen remotely like that in the book?
Yes and no. There is a scene where they're presented with food and they're starving, like they haven't eaten in days.
Yeah.
But in the book they kind of like reason through it, like, well, here's why it doesn't make any sense for you to be poisoning us, blah blah blah, so we'll try the food. Like, it's a lot more abrupt in the movie. Like, they go from point A to point, like, W.
Yeah.
With no steps in between.
Yeah, I guess my question was, it was literally back-to-back scenes where they realize we shouldn't eat the food, and then the next scene, they immediately start eating the food, and I'm like, what? What?
Well, and the scene in the neighborhood doesn't play out the same way.
In the book.
Yeah, so that's one thing where it's different. Like, they're not offered any food in that scene, so... Okay. I don't know if that helps you at all.
Is there a scene before the time where they eat it, where they're offered food and they don't eat it?
No.
Okay, that was my big problem. That was my big problem with that, and why I was confused, because it was so just like, what? You just figured out you shouldn't eat the food. Not even figured out. You just had a scene where you realized you shouldn't eat the food you were being offered, and then you immediately eat the food you're being offered. And it wouldn't even bother me if, Meg obviously doesn't eat it and looks like upset or kind of confused or like not happy that they're eating it, but she never tries to stop them or says anything. And I guess the idea is they're like slowly getting worn down, but they're there for such a short amount of time, and it's so close to the scene where it just happened that I was like, wait, what? That's a stupid specific thing. I just didn't understand what the hell was going on. All right, and then finally, just to get back to Charles Wallace again, because we were sidetracked by the food thing. So he gets taken, he opens his brain in the book, or opens his mind, because he, and his reason being that he can somehow then control it, destroy it, what?
That he thinks he'll be able to, like, peek inside.
Okay.
And, like, find out information.
Right.
And he thinks he'll be able to do this safely.
So it's a little, Pandora's boxy type.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
Thing of, okay. Because in the movie, it just, like we said, it just happens.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not the food, like you said. Because it's not the food in the book. It's also not the food in the movie, because nothing happens to Calvin.
Right.
He just is fine. He just eats the food and is fine. My bigger problem, too, is that then the thing that plays out, and I don't know if this was addressed in the book at all, after Charles becomes possessed by the evil, the it or whatever, Meg's dad and Calvin test her out of there because Meg's dad is like, we gotta go and then we'll come back and get him because we can't save him right now or whatever. And Meg's like, no, fuck that, I'm not leaving him here. And again, it's another moment where it's like, what did she learn?
Nothing.
Because like earlier in the movie, they get thrown to Camazotz because she resists.
Right, because she doesn't want to go make a plan.
Because she's too headstrong and hasty and wants to just go immediately and try to save her dad. And she ends up they end up there and they're like, it's not a great thing. And then the same thing happens here where her dad's like, we gotta go, we'll come back and get him. And she's like, no. And I guess the idea is just stick to your guns. Like,
Yes.
Okay, so... But... ultimately, the thing that ends up in the this is the whole last act of this movie is just I don't understand any of like what we're supposed to be getting out of it. But she basically like her and Charles have this back and forth where it seems like she's like trying to convince him she actually loves him.
Yeah,
because he's adopted, and that's made clear earlier in the movie. But there's never any tension on the fact that he's adopted. Mm-mm. There's never a single hint at the fact that he feels unwanted or unloved or any sort of weird...
no, there's not.
You know what I mean? There's never any hint throughout the whole rest of the movie that he feels any sort of weirdness about the fact that he's adopted and that Meg is, not his blood sister or whatever. Yeah. And they seem like a great family in that he wouldn't have any of those sort of insecurities. And now obviously, and so what it seems to do is kind of heighten all your insecurities and make... because a big theme of the movie is overcoming your own insecurities and learning to love yourself, that sort of thing, for who you are. Great theme, got it. Does a pretty good job with that overall. Actually, I mean, that's the thing it's probably most successful at, kind of. But when Charles at the end is like evil and like, again, I guess it's the it that is controlling him, and it's not really him so much, but it sounds like he's voicing these weird feelings of like insecurity about that, or at least if he's not, then it seems weird that the thing that saves him is Meg convincing him that she loves him and that he's her brother. How does this play out in the book? I'm sorry, I'm just confused.
So it is love that saves him.
Yeah,
and then she uses love to save him.
Which I'm fine with that.
It's very kind of like in Harry Potter. That's
right.
Like
it's love.
Yeah, it's the one thing that the evil doesn't have that the heroes have. Blah blah blah. He's not adopted in the book. And I think that the idea of him being adopted kind of like heightening that theme could have worked really well. Yeah. Like, I think I understand why they wanted to go with that. Yeah. But like you said, they don't set up any kind of insecurity about it from him, which to me is why it doesn't work. Yeah, that's why I was so confused. If there had been a single scene early in the movie where there's any sort of back and maybe there was that was cut, who knows? It feels like there was a lot cut probably, but if there was a single scene or two where you got any sort of inkling that Charles Wallace felt not completely like part of the family, or not completely like that Meg didn't completely love him, or something. So he felt that insecurity in him at all. Yeah. Then it instantly makes sense to me at the end. I get why I don't get why the thing took him over, because that again never really it just kind of happens. Mm-hmm. But I at least would understand why what she does saves, or getting him to get over that last bit and reminding him of her love for him, and that insecurity forces out the it from him or whatever. I could buy that, I guess. Mm-hmm. I just didn't really understand why it worked in the movie. I was very confused by all of that. I don't think it does work in the movie. No, I know, but I mean, why her telling him that she loves him and that he's her brother, he's her brother and that sort of thing. I was like, what? Was that a thing he didn't know? Like, was that a thing he was worried about? Like, I don't know. It was very strange. So in the book, it's the same thing. Love conquers. Yeah. But is it just she goes to him and right. Well, in the book, she doesn't like headbutt her way into staying there.
Yeah.
She gets injured, and they have to leave for, like, a chapter or two. They leave Charles Wallace there, and they go to another planet, and basically all, like, recoup. And I get why they cut that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a weird, like, break from the action right at the climax.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a little weird.
It's a bit odd, but then she goes back by herself.
Okay.
Like, she insists on going back, and the misses are like, we don't know if we're going to be able to get you off again.
Right.
And she's like, no, I have to go back. I have to try to save him. And that's when she goes back and basically uses the power of love to break its hold on Charles Wallace.
Okay. Boy. Whew. All right. All right, let's... That was all I had for Lost in Adaptation, but let's just get, I don't know what we're going to call this segment, but maybe just, that was disappointing.
You know, I really, really, really wanted to like this movie.
I desperately wanted to like this movie. I wanted
to like it so much.
Because I like so much of the idea of the movie.
Yeah. And it was just a mess. Like, I'm sorry, and I hate to have to say it, but it was a mess.
It really was. Like, I had so many issues for so many different reasons throughout the film that what it most reminded me of was, and you'd have never seen this, but was like when I watched Suicide Squad. I had almost the exact same feeling where the editing and the pacing are so terrible that it completely destroys any enjoyment for me of the film. Not any, that's not true. There were things I enjoyed. There were moments I enjoyed. But it's edited and even, I think to some extent, shot so strangely and poorly and paced so terribly. And I think part of that those things, and those are the two most important things that you never really noticed. Boy, this is going everywhere. You know how when you get that feeling when you watch a movie and you go, this really isn't just a very good movie, but you're not really sure why you just didn't like it. Not even not sure why. You just didn't like it. And you could point to other things you didn't like. You can point to story elements you didn't like. But you get that sort of vague feeling as you're watching it that, like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, the reason for that is the editing and the pacing. And because those are hard things are pretty difficult, especially for a standard audience to qualify in a precise way and realize that's what's not working for them.
Right.
But it is like two of the most important things that when they're working right, you don't realize and you just like, wow, this is a great movie. And when they aren't working, you're like, holy cow, this is so not good. Like this is a mess. And the word mess is probably the easiest word to identify with that. And the problem I had throughout the film was that with the editing, it felt like to me every single shot, and I haven't seen this, I've been looking at some reviews and I haven't seen this critique very often. I've seen a few of them, but like every single shot to me felt like a close-up or a medium shot. And for people that don't know what that means. A close-up, obviously, most people know what that is. Is a close-up generally is the face, just the face.
Yeah.
You know, a close-in. There's also this also uses what I think some people would probably call an extreme close-up a lot of the times, where it's like literally just like the face, whereas a close-up's, you know, usually like the neck or, you know, it's just a close-up of the face. A lot of close-ups and a whole lot of medium shots being sort of like waist-ish up, roughly, where you're getting, you know, the top half of the character, so if they're doing any emoting with their hands or anything, you're getting that in. But a lot of shit was shot like that, and then it was chopped around so willy-nilly between characters, and the dialogue bounced back and forth. I got so lost in every scene at not only where we were in space, but like there's this thing when you're editing where you want to maintain the audience's feeling of
orientation.
Yes, I mean, you want to maintain the audience's feeling of orientation within the scene, so that when you're cutting back and forth between people talking and within the environment, whatever room they're in, wherever they're at, that you feel like you know where they're at, where the characters they're talking to are, and where everything that is going on in the room is. it's not a super easy thing to do all the time, especially in a movie where you have 6 characters a lot of times on the screen at once with the misses and our characters and then usually another character. But it got so distracting to me trying to remember who was where and what the room we were in even looked like, or what we were even like looking at anymore, because everything was somebody's face or somebody's upper half. It just blew me away. And that was the editing, and it drove me insane. And then the pacing, this movie rubber bands around so much where it starts pretty good. The first act, or I would say the first act pacing is pretty solid, where we're moving from scene to scene in a way that feels good, makes sense. And then we finally get on the adventure. I thought that all worked pretty good. But then we hit the first major weird pacing snag when we get to the Happy Medium's place. Mm-hmm. Because they spend forever there.
Yeah.
Exceedingly
forever.
long time there. And you're like, why are we still in this scene? Like, you think it's done, but then it's not. And she goes and talks to the Happy Medium by herself for a while. And so that happens, and then it finally takes off from there again, and then you get to the end, and then the pacing is like bouncing everywhere where we're like, they get to the Camazotz, and you're like, oh wait, okay, we're towards the end, but then there's like a whole bunch more that still happens, and then it just, you're back and forth and on and off the gas pedal so often that it just, combined with the truly just slipshod editing I feel like took place in this movie, really was like what the thing that for me that just made it a mess. But that's a little more from the technical side, and I'm hardly completely qualified to talk on that, but I at least know a little bit about why I think it's not working for general audiences. I think is and some of the reasons they might not even realize. I think it has a lot to do with how it's edited, how it's shot, and how it's paced. And it's a thing you don't even really realize, but it's like, oh, God, this is a chore to watch.
So, there were a lot of elements to this that I thought didn't work, a lot of which we've discussed.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that they didn't set up well, some of the through lines that didn't pan out, some of the thematic stuff that was just kind of messy.
Yeah.
And then there were other little things, like some of the dialogue I thought was not... that great.
Some of it was straight up terrible.
Yeah. Costumes were fun.
Yeah.
Makeup and costume department had
Great.
just a grand old time.
Great. Super fun. Super cool. Way on board.
Giant Oprah.
Did not work
I
for
wasn't
me.
a big fan of Giant Oprah.
I'm just going to say Oprah in general didn't work for me. Because, one, I didn't think she did a very good job. And Oprah can be a very good actress. Like, she's very good in at least movies back in the day. But in this, I thought her performance was, we'll say, uninspired. I don't know. I just thought, I didn't think it was...
a little canned.
Yeah, it felt really canned to me. And I guess what she was going for was sort of that ethereal, like...
Yeah.
You know, restrained, like...
Yeah.
Goddess type thing, but it didn't... But more than so for me was that it's so distracting, and I don't know if this is fair criticism or not, but for me, this was just how I felt watching it, is that it's so distracting every time you look at the screen and it's Oprah.
Yeah.
Like, it's just Oprah. Like, she is so monolithic and like... Yeah, it's hard to describe because, and I don't want to be unfair in the sense that there are plenty of actors and actresses who are huge that when they're in a role... can be, I guess it's because she's such a personality,
right? Well,
we don't.
That's it. We don't know her as an actress, really. We know her as Oprah.
Yeah. She's this huge personality outside of cinema.
Yeah,
it's like if Obama was in the fucking movie, and if he had acted or like here, a better example, like Ronald Reagan, because he actually acted back in the day. Like if towards the end of his career, Ronald Reagan like had a small part in a movie, I'd be like, all it could be like is that's Ronald Reagan as the president of the United States or former president. You know what I mean? Or it's just every time she was on screen, I just couldn't get over the fact that it was Oprah, and it just took me out of the movie every time. And I know some people that might not be a problem, but for me, it was.
Yeah, sure. You know who I would have liked better? Who played the Queen in Black Panther?
Oh yeah,
she would have been really good.
Angela Bassett?
Very regal. Yeah,
Bassett?
I think so.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I'm sure she was busy doing Black Panther.
Yeah, she was probably filming Black Panther.
Done this, but
she would have been great.
She would have been really good.
She would have been really good. And yeah, I also just didn't think Oprah was very good. But that's whatever. Go ahead.
So the big thing that I wanted to talk about was Camazotz.
Okay.
Because they completely changed what it is.
Okay.
For the movie. So how would you describe Camazotz, having seen the film?
Well,
what's it about?
Based on our Lost in adaptation, I already have a lot of trouble with that because I was asking you what. So this is another problem I had, and this kind of gets back to that discussion. I had very hard time knowing if there was a difference between Camazotz and the It, because in the movie it kind of feels like the same thing. Like it's like this big black bulby mass, and they're like, "You're on Camazotz," and I'm like, "Oh, is that the planet?" I guess. But they're like, this is where the It lives, I guess. So maybe the Camazotz is the planet, and the It inhabits there or something. I guess. I
think that's how they try to sell it in the movie.
Yeah,
I think what they were doing. Yeah. It felt to me like almost like they went into a computer game where it kept changing. And, like, it was just changing around them all the time.
So, yes, in the movie, Camazotz, the planet, or the place they are, it very much is like a simulation.
Yes.
Like, where it can change what it looks like and what... Like, they first get there, it's like a field, and then there's a tornado, and then it blows them up.
Yeah, which that made no fucking sense.
I didn't understand that. I also went to the bathroom during that moment. But I did not understand what was going on there. And then... And then eventually they get to the point where they're in the neighborhood with like the Stepford
then
Wives
they're in the neighborhood, and then they're on the beach, and then they're just in like a white space.
And the room that reminds me of like the Matrix, like from the end of like the second Matrix movie, where it's like this big white room,
which is a big part of what makes it feel like that kind of simulation.
Yeah,
which I guess is how they were trying to sell it, but it's not 100% clear.
No. So okay, so
in the book,
it's
not a simulation; it's an actual planet that the It has, like, taken complete control of.
Okay.
It's a planet that has fallen to the darkness. They've, like, stopped resisting against the darkness. So, the scene...
You say they. Are there inhabitants of the city?
There are people that live there.
Oh. Were those people in the houses supposed to be...
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're supposed to be in the movie, because they play them more like robots or like a simulation. But in the book, they are actual people who are being forced to live this way. Like the scene with everybody bouncing the balls in time, and then all the mothers step out in time, that's in the book.
Okay.
And it was in the trailers. And now, having seen the movie, I'm pissed that it was in the trailers, because that was like book baiting.
Yeah.
Like, they made me think that it was going to be the way it is in the book, and it wasn't.
Yeah, because it all folds away.
Yeah,
it
very
much
much doesn't
feels
happen
like a
in the
simulation.
book.
Like, when they leave that scene, it, like, disappears and, like dominoes here, and it folds up, which made me think that for me, as an audience member, not knowing, all I thought that scene was the It trying to, like, somehow seduce them into, you know what I mean? Not seduce them, but, like... to trick them into coming into the house so that it could capture them. Whatever. I don't even know. Like, yeah.
So, basically, in the book, Camazotz is a place that the It has 100% control over. And everyone who lives there has to abide by these rules or else. And they go through, like, conditioning.
Oh.
So, when they're in the scene in the neighborhood, there's this one boy who can't quite bounce his ball in time.
Oh.
And then closer to the end of the book, when she goes back to Camazotz, she sees him being conditioned to bounce his ball in time. And it's horrifying.
Yeah.
So to me, Camazotz in the book, way more sinister.
Yeah.
Way more interesting. And I'm really upset with the writers and with the director for missing the opportunity to make a statement about this kind of homogeny and forcing everyone to fit into the same mold. And the fact that they didn't take that opportunity makes me distrust the movie. I already felt like a lot of the platitudes in it were kind of empty, but for me, the fact that they decided nah on that opportunity confirms it.
Huh. It's interesting because, I mean, it fits totally in line with the themes of the movie.
Yeah.
To do that. My only guess of why they wouldn't portray that is it could have been... I could see it being very difficult to establish this whole other world with, like, and establish the fact that those citizens are... I don't know how it's done in the book, if it's done through, like, third person, like, or, you know, like narrate...
I mean, you see it when you go there.
Right.
Like, you see how everybody is the same and they all do the same movements.
And I guess
they also talk to a guy.
Okay. See, yeah, that would be interesting because because you very much get the implication or the feeling in the movie that it's just like an empty core, like a rocky planet that the it somehow shows them things on to like fuck with them.
Yeah.
Basically. Huh. Yeah, that is really strange that they would decide to get rid of that because like I said, my only thought would be that they thought it could have been too convoluted and hard to explain it towards the end of the book. Movie.
I'm so disappointed because I think they went with something that was less impactful, that was less meaningful, that was more generic.
It also, because that at least to me, I feel like would make more sense. I would be less confused about what this place was or what the it was, or like what their, I don't say goal, but like it would at least give me a feeling for what the threat was and what I think it would help ground the third act of the movie, where I was very just sort of like, all right, I don't really get what we're doing here. Like, we're saving her, but like, how to explain it? Yeah, that would absolutely help me sort of see and feel more grounded and like because I thought the movie had a really big problem with world building.
Oh yeah.
And I think having that if they had gone that route where there was a race of people here or whatever that were broken by the it or whatever and are now living this as you said, homogenous cult-like, not cult-like, but whatever existence, would sort of ground the third act in a way that made more sense, maybe. I don't know. Huh. Interesting. That is a very interesting change.
It's like I said, it's a change that makes me not trust the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. There was like one of the other big problems I had was that I felt like a lot of the characters weren't established very well. Meg being a big important one. I think Storm Reed,
Storm Reed
does a great job. She's a really good actress, but I didn't get a lot of, and maybe a lot of this was cut. It was the thing I mentioned earlier. There's not very much science in the movie.
Yeah.
For especially for the fact that like that's kind of like a big thing from what I understand is that this book helped inspire little girls to be scientists.
Yeah.
I don't feel like her character ever really does much science. There's a scene in one of the trailers where she explains transdimensional travel that is not in the movie.
Yeah.
That's like in the first act of the movie, would have been in the first act of the movie, and would have sort of helped to me establish her character as the science thing. They show her like being interested in what her dad does at a very young age and like being into science. And they have paid some lip service to the fact that she was a good student, but I never got the vibe that like she was like a super smart like science person early. And
they don't actually show her really doing that, and they don't
until randomly in the middle of the movie where she's like calculating trajectories in her head or something. Like during that tornado sequence, she somehow has the idea that if they, and she says, and again, I was going to the bathroom during this moment, but she says something about classic slingshot sheets. So they get in a fucking stump when this tornado comes, and they get in the stump, and then the stump gets thrown up onto the cliff by the tornado.
That scene is not in the book, and it made zero sense, and I could not even tell you what they were going for.
But I swear she says something about like
no, she
math.
does. She like tries to calculate the way that it'll fling them, but how could she possibly
she possibly do that? It doesn't make... And then when they get up there, she goes, classic slingshot maneuver, which, now that's a thing, but it's not a thing in the way they say it's a thing. What a slingshot maneuver is when you use the mass of a planet or a moon or whatever and the orbit of it, the gravity... So like when we go, it was a big key point in the Martian movie, but where you shoot like a satellite or a rocket, whatever you want to do, you can shoot it like around a large planet or a moon or whatever, and use the gravity of the of the planet or the moon to slingshot your satellite or whatever around and then on to whatever else you want. And like, that's how they do that in The Martian. That's how they save the people at the end. Spoilers. And she says that, but that doesn't happen because it's just wind. A tornado picks up the thing and throws it onto the top of the cliff. That's not a slingshot maneuver.
I don't know. That whole scene could have been cut. Because it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't add anything. But
it adds a moment where she gets to pretend to do science, but it doesn't even make sense. I
don't know. We need to wrap this up because
what time is it?
It's like almost 9:30.
Oh Jesus! Okay, I'm sorry. I just had so much to say.
I know.
But yeah, I wish they had set that up better, and I also wish they would have set up her flaws more. I feel like I get where her character goes, but I feel like they didn't do a great job of setting up her insecurities early on. We get hints of it throughout the movie with her hair, and that sort of thing, but we never get that, like, the whole thing where she always feels like she's doing everything wrong. I never got that vibe necessarily early. Like, maybe they cut some of that.
They don't really show us. They just kind of tell us that she's having problems in school or whatever. I mean, like you said, there are hints of it here and there, but they don't do a good job of showing that and setting up her character.
Yeah, and then there's the the whole thing with the bully, which is a kind of, but that doesn't really work. And then the thing that I knew from the beginning when I was like, oh no, this is going downhill, and it's very early in the movie, is when Charles Wallace is sitting on a bench and those two teachers behind him are
engaging in the worst, most canned dialogue I've ever heard.
Expository. I could not believe my ears.
I know. We looked at each other
like,
theater.
What is happening? They're literally like, the one teacher's like, yeah, it's a real shame that Meg's dad disappeared 4 years ago. Yeah, he just left. He's never going to be back. I know. Yeah, it's really affected Meg. She used to be such a good student, but now she really can't. She's really problem child. And that Charles Wallace, he's really brilliant, but, there's something weird about him. Yeah, and, her mom they're probably dealing with, like, it's just back and forth forever of them just, like, saying what I was like, what are we watching? And now I will here's my one defense I'll give. I'm gonna say defense. I would like to imagine, and maybe this is the case, that this movie works for little kids.
That's what I've been trying to think about the whole past 24 hours.
Me too.
I'm trying to decide if I would have liked this movie as a kid.
And if so, it's all that matters to me. Honestly, not all that matters, but
I think I might have as a little kid. I don't know if I would have liked it even as like a 10 or 11-year-old though.
Yeah. I'm worried I might have been bored because it seems like it could be boring.
Yeah.
But I guess my thing is, if this was really made for kids and sort of our problems with the pacing and the editing and the dialogue, like little kids not going to give a shit about the fact that two teachers are standing there expositing the most on-the-nose bullshit ever because they're little kids. They'll just take it in. You know what I mean? And so those kind of problems, and like my problem with the close-ups and the medium shots and being lost in space, I feel like kids maybe not have that problem. And if kids can watch this movie, because there are a lot of movies like fucking like Hook, critics hated that movie. Got terrible reviews when it came out. Every kid that saw that movie when they were a little kid fucking loved it.
Yeah. And
it was like super important to their childhood. Maybe this movie will be that.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I generally come from the school of thought that like, yeah, there's movies, they're for kids, and maybe we shouldn't measure them to the same kind of standards that we do for movies for adults. But also, kids aren't idiots.
I know.
They just don't know all of the cues yet.
Yeah.
But you can help them learn those cues by giving them good stories.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I agree. I just, like I said, I think there's enough I wonder if there's not enough moments in this movie that have good moral messages and good... sort of simplistic and on the nose,
Yeah.
messages that will work for little kids and teach them some important things while being in a sort of wild, multicolored dream ride, that the fact that it doesn't work for people who understand storytelling, maybe that doesn't matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
I don't know.
But I don't think you're wrong about kids and telling good stories to kids. I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't know.
Well, I guess we'll find out as the years pass.
Yeah, I could talk about this movie forever. I'm not even close to. I know we're done.
We're gonna have like an hour and a half long podcast.
I know, and I gotta edit this, but I feel like I didn't even get close to touching on all the stuff I wanted to talk about. But but yeah, it was a disappointment.
Super disappointing, especially after like the very first teaser trailer for this, where it's just images from the movie and "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This" playing in the background. I was like, holy shit, this is going to be awesome. Yeah. This looks amazing. And then, like, as more and more trailers came out, I started to feel leery about it. Like, maybe this is going to be really cheesy. And having seen it, I'm just very disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's very cheesy. And, yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I really am interested now to watch Selma. I never saw it, but everybody raves about how good it is, and and about how great of a director Ava DuVernay is, and I'm so interested now to see, because this was so astonishingly bad to me. I mean, like I said, there are lots of things I like, but just in general, so astonishingly bad. I'm really interested to see another movie she's done. Maybe a less complicated adaptation. And it's not even an adaptation; it's a historical retelling or whatever. But something that's not adapting a crazy cross-dimensional sci-fi story.
That's the thing, though. The book has a lot of like kind of kooky ideas in it, but the story itself is pretty simple. Yeah, and I think where the adaptation failed was that they tried to add to it. Yeah. And they tried to change things without seeing those changes through.
Yeah. Well, so, final verdict?
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the book on this one.
Yeah, it's...
And part of me wishes that I could have gone with the movie. Yeah. But I'm going to have to go with the book. Read the book. Yeah. I'll recommend it pretty wholeheartedly. It's a little simplistic. I probably didn't like it as much on the reread as I did when I was a kid. Yeah. But it's pretty solid. And it is a classic. All right. The movie, I don't want to tell anybody not to go see it.
No. I mean, actually, I think I would. I would say if you have kids, take your kids to go see it. I think it's worth kids at least seeing if they like it. Yeah.
Or I would say, like, if you were already wanting to see it,
go see
don't let me dissuade you. Yeah. If you are not interested, don't bother.
No. If it's something that sounded remotely unappealing to you, or that you saw a trailer and go, it looks kind of cheesy, you're already right. You're not gonna like it. But I would say it's worth it. For there's not that many things for kids to go see all the time. I think this would be one of the things. At least take it. They might like it. Who knows? I've run the experiment for us. Take your kids, see if they like it.
Yeah, we don't have any kids to take, so take your kids and let us know if they liked it.
It's got good messages. It's got a good, interesting. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. I could literally. We have to do a special episode about this where we talk about it for another hour and a half because I really, really could. I have so many other things I want to talk about. So if you want to hear us talk more about this, let us know. We'll do a special episode. But we got to end this one here. Katie, what's next?
So next time we will be previewing The Princess Diaries.
Oh, shit. Okay.
As well as Ready Player One. I thought we could
Those are great.
I thought we could use a break from like all the sci-fi in the middle there. Yeah. So
also, those are great. I don't know anything about The Princess Diaries, but I can't imagine there's a better counterpoint to Ready Player One from what I've read so far than Princess Diaries.
Princess Diaries is one of my favorite adaptations.
Okay.
So I'm pretty excited about it.
I have a fucking feeling that Ready Player One is going to be one of my favorite adaptations because we'll get into it once I finish the book, but oh boy.
Yeah, you've told me a little bit, but don't tell me too much.
Oh boy.
Because I don't want to know any spoilers.
Oh boy, let's just say this. Ready Player One is not good. The book. All right, so that's the next episode, previewing Princess Diaries and Ready Player One, and then we have back-to-back episodes after that, because one's in an off week, so we won't have a preview episode. We'll have 2 regular episodes after the next preview episode. So get excited for that. Bone back up on the Princess Diaries, and get ready to go see Ready Player One, or if you've read it. And I'm sorry if you
Babe, don't give it away.
There's so many people that like this book. And I thought I would. But, whew, boy, we'll get into it next time. And then the time after that. Until then, keep reading books. Keep watching movies. Just, unfortunately, read the book of A Wrinkle in Time. And maybe go see the movie. But, you know,